Hello, welcome to Black Vision Network. We're your host, Janae.
And I'm Theo.
And if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe, like this video. On this channel, we like to make videos about education, counseling, wealth, and business. So yeah, go ahead and subscribe.
Today we're tackling defunding the police. So this has got a lot of national acclaim recently because of Joe Biden's comments recently in his State of the Union address. It's been a hot button topic across his campaign, and so we thought that we would give our take on what defunding the police actually means, our experience with police, and what we see for the future of that in general. So I guess let's start with what defunding the police means to us.
I guess right off the bat, defunding the police just means giving them less money from the government.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means putting people in office that won't give them that money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually the people that are with the money that have the money. But we have to have money to be able to make moves like that in this system. And then I just keep thinking about how we're gonna do that. So I guess the first thing is to build our own wealth and power.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, because fundamentally, I mean, even with the situation in Ukraine, and we obviously send our prayers to that situation with Ukraine and Russia, but our military and police budgets have steadily increased over and over, year in, year out. You know, there are communities screaming for resources and funding that aren't getting them. You'll see, even, for example, where you grow up, construction projects that won't be finished for years on end, but somehow when there's a need for money, we can always send it to the military and police. So defunding the police is just that, taking funds away from their enormous budgets and taking it and putting it in the places where it is most needed. And this is a issue that hits especially home for me, because growing up on the south side of Chicago, one of the most, in Chicago in general, is one of the most segregated communities in America. Just when you go from block to block, you can go from one of the wealthiest areas to one of the poorest areas just by crossing a street. And so growing up on the south side of Chicago, there's a strong need for funding. There will be communities in the south side that schools will be shut down. Hospitals will be shut down. That access to basic needs, food, health, education, are just not there in certain aspects of the community, and yet consistently and continually more funds are being given to the Chicago Police Department. So obviously there's a lot of different perspectives when it comes to this. So I would love to hear kind of your perspective on, what are your general feelings and encounters with police? What have they been? What do you see? How do you see police as what they're supposed to do in our society? And yeah, just your general feelings toward them.
I guess my general feelings is just avoid them, but all the experiences that I've had, personal experiences, I haven't had any traumatic ones that I've heard from you or my friends or even my brothers. Well, and it's just I don't know, I've been in interactions with the police where we would have one at our school, and just a cool dude,
yeah,
just cool dude, somebody's uncle or something. And then there was the one thing that always comes to mind is the one time a policeman showed me his taser, and then he was I was like, you tased that tree stump. Wait, okay, I guess I'll give you context. Literally, my dad was crazy and called the cops on my brothers because they were fighting, and they were probably about to, I don't know. So he called the cops, and then they came, and they're they rolled their eyes, and they're okay, do you have somewhere to go? To my brother, and he was yeah. So he left for the time being to calm down. But then we were all just sitting out there, and I was what's that? He's the taser.
Just a curious child.
Yeah, and then I was you taste that tree stump? He was no, you'll probably feel it. And I was barefoot because I was a country bumpkin. Never had shoes on. But yeah, that was like the one thing I come up with every time I think
Yeah.
of police officers.
So let me ask you 2 follow-ups, if you don't mind. You said that your general feeling is to avoid them. And you also talked about police being in school. Now, you were somebody who played a lot of sports, so you obviously traveled to a lot of different school districts. So I'm curious if you only saw police in schools in certain neighborhoods. Was it across the board? Kind of talk to me about those interactions.
Oh, definitely, of course. It was like in the more black schools that there were more police officers.
Yep.
But I honestly never felt intimidated by them. Because I do realize people like fought in school. Like,
Yeah.
people used to go to school to fight. And I was like,
Yep.
that's not what I'm here for. So
Right,
you're
right,
not bothering me. Like, you know, so
Mhm.
like, it was never that big of a thing for me. But what about you? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Chicago public schools. Most all the time, especially in the black communities, there are police officers there. And I would say initially, I didn't pay much mind to it. It wasn't until I got older and would see when we would travel to play a white school, for example, or a more affluent community, that wasn't the case. And it was just weird to me. Like, what is the difference here? Why does there need to be cops here in the black schools? And why isn't there cops in the white schools? Like, I just thought it was something that was across the board. But I would say my general encounters with the police have been poor. So some people may say that I'm biased, but for example, when we were living in Greenwood, when I was driving I can't even remember the car, the Chevy.
Impala?
No, the green one, the small green one.
Oh, the Equinox?
I can't remember the name of it, but basically it was a fishbowl. So no tinted windows, old school car. We lived in Greenwood, which I later learned was, I guess kind of prejudiced area. But it was right close to my job, my first job coming out of Rose. So I was like, I want to live close by my job, whatever. So it wasn't until I got pulled over, I would say probably 4 or 5 times as I'm pulling into my apartment within the first couple months of being there, that I noticed, some of the things that obviously Janae's family is from Indianapolis, and I would talk to, when we would talk at church and be like, oh my gosh, you live in Greenwood? Like, that you should get away from there. And I'm like, why? What's wrong? And then after getting pulled over so many times for no reason, like, oh, hey, I noticed that you didn't turn on your turn signal here, even though I did, or you were doing 44 and a 45, or you have a headlight out when I don't, and just things like that. It's just, you can clearly see, like I said, it's a fishbowl. You can see there's a black man driving in a place where he's not supposed to be. So I got pulled over a lot. Outside of that, I would say my first experience with the police was not great. So I grew up in Chicago public schools, all black children, up until I go to Morgan Park Academy, which is a private school. And my first experience there is, oh my gosh, I see all these different races. First time being in school with white people, Asian people, different races, etc. And we're outside in recess doing a field trip, doing an experiment, whatever have you. And a police officer drives by, and we're walking past. It's me and a couple other white kids, and he stops me out of the group and says, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I go to school here. We're doing a field trip, whatever. My teacher's right over there." And he's like, "No." He escorts the other kids back to go back towards the school. Pulls me aside, puts me in handcuffs, asks me for my ID, your school ID, all of this. I don't have it. Mind you, we're at recess, field trip, we're outside. Teacher comes over like, "Hey, what are you doing?" That's one of my students. And just a whole ordeal that wasn't necessary because, again, I'm a black face and where I'm not supposed to be. So I quickly learned, I guess, to associate police with upholding the status quo, racism, the natural order of things, if you will, that you're a black face in a white space, you're not supposed to be here. We're gonna make you feel uncomfortable here, so you don't want to be here. So I would say, in general, that's kind of been my experience with police.
Yeah, and I can see like how like something like that could just be like traumatic.
For sure.
Like stay with you for the rest of your life. Like I hear a lot of people go through that, and I will say I'm grateful to not have gone through that, but I don't know. I just think it's good to have both perspectives.
Yeah.
Just to know that not everything is bad, but like I've also had bad interactions with different types of people, you know. So
Absolutely.
like everybody's life experiences are different, but one thing that I like to focus on is just like what can I do now to make sure like that never happens. Like even though no matter how much money you have, like you can always be, you know, judged by the color of your skin for no reason. But I don't know. I just like to be able to stunt on people anyway, you know?
Yeah, that was always a big issue of mine because I'm a very much cause and effect person. If you do things the right way, then things should work out the right way for you. So at first, I used to subscribe to, if you make it to a certain success level, certain acclaim, then you don't have to worry about being outcasted as, you know, the only black face here. Or if you just say yes, sir, and no, sir, to the police, then they will leave you alone and you'll be able to walk away scot-free. And in my personal experience, and obviously, you know, situations that we have seen, rest in peace, Sandra Bland, and all of the names, Eric Brown, that have happened so far, we see so many times that that's not the case. You can do everything right and still lose your life, still walk away completely changed by the experience. So one thing, like you said, the focus for us should be, you know, how can we improve? And that's why it's weird for me to see the backlash to defund the police, because for me it's a very clear call for help. We see that our communities are in need. We're in need of education, we're in need of funding, healthcare and things, and we see continually that funds that could be used for that are being given to those who are harassing us and killing us. So I would say, what are some of the other, I guess, ways or tactics that you see that we can go about in trying to make a change here?
So this like definitely makes me think back to like the Joe Budden podcast episode we was talking about, and like if we knew better.
Okay.
Like, and I think like that's why I think making YouTube videos is like super important, no matter how difficult the topic is for me to talk about.
Yeah.
I think it's good to just talk about those things to like maybe spread awareness. Like maybe we draw them in with like how they relate to us, but then we bring them a new topic that they wouldn't have thought about. And I just think the number one thing you can do is like educate yourself. And whatever you learn, you even if you don't think it's enough, like teach it to other people, because you never know what little trinket of words you say, what little phrase you say could like give somebody an epiphany to like do things differently. And I always think the number one thing is to like always be a lifelong learner and never stop expanding, but also taking inspired action to act on that knowledge.
Okay, so I don't want to take you off track here, but what do you say to those who say that they did everything right in a situation with the police, or that, you know, understanding it from the cop's perspective, or knowing better, for example, didn't do them better? What do you say to those people?
I guess like anytime something negative happens, you really just have to see the polarity and take that loss as a lesson. No matter what loss it is, like every loss is a lesson. There's something you can learn from that. And how are you going to use that to fuel the fire and the passion to what you can do to change? Like that sounds cryptic, but like one thing like I was thinking about today was like I will always be able to like take out like negative emotions on like working out. Like
outlet.
Yeah. Like what kind of creative outlet that adds value somehow, or like allows you to express yourself can you like ventilate that through? And like, how are you going to share that with the world? Like, even just telling your story can be a way that can inspire somebody to do better, black or white, you know?
Absolutely. And I think for me, it's kind of the same approach, but in my general view of how to combat racism and how to deal with the inequalities we see, it's always curing the root causes. So while, for example, on TV, you'll see that, oh, you know, people in black communities, they're just killing each other. But me coming from one of those black communities that has been labeled a certain way, I understand kind of the actions and causes that
Oh my God.
that are behind that. So, for example, having been in a situation where I got my only meals outside of dinner from school, understanding that now that this school has been closed and what that does to, okay, now there's gang activity on my block, and now there's no longer a school that I can go to. What options do I have outside of other than being a part of a gang? So you kind of understand and get to learn what are the root causes. So how can you combat the root causes? Education, opportunity, job opportunity are some of the key reasons that you see a divide in those areas, because you don't have access to job opportunities, you don't have access to premium education, and so kind of ties in with what you said, being a lifelong learner, extending opportunities to learn to those who wouldn't otherwise have them. For example, doing content like this. We know that everybody doesn't have Wi-Fi, but those that do, you can look up a YouTube video and learn things that you wouldn't otherwise learn. For example, if you had a recent school closure, things of that nature. So just making sure that you're using the benefits and privilege that you have to help others. And that's regardless of skin color, whether you're black, white, whatever you can do. Try not to look at people, for example, in a crime-infested neighborhood as it would be labeled as, oh, these are just delinquent people. Try to look at it as these are people who do not have the privileges that I have. You know, I was able to go to a private school, so I was able to go to a good college and get an engineering degree. Had I not been afforded those opportunities, my life could look a lot different. And when you put yourself in those situations, in those shoes, you're able to see things from a different perspective and appreciate what you have and forward those opportunities on to others.
Yeah. And that's like, that just makes me think of like imposter syndrome. Like just thinking like, how do we get here? Like sometimes I think like, I don't have enough in life. I want more. And then sometimes I'm like, dang, I came a long way. Like,
absolutely.
What? Who would have thought I would be here right now living life the way I'm living? And just like tap into that mindset when you think about like how you can give back to people, because like you are enough right now as you are to be able to give. Because if you come into that mindset of being able to give, like you'll see how much you're given, and it's crazy. So like finding a way to use what you have, the experiences you have right now, to like give back is just, first of all, it's not that hard. Don't overthink it. Literally don't overthink it, just do it. Like I was talking to you about shorts, I was like, well, that makes it a little easier than editing, uploading, blah blah blah. But then it's just like my
YouTube
mindset
shorts.
around it. Like, how you think? If you think it's gonna be easy, it's gonna be easy. If you think
sure.
it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be hard. Like,
absolutely.
just say it's easy.
So let's, I guess, kind of, obviously there have been some concessions, changes made to, police reform. Body cams, things of this nature, people who are saying get rid of the police completely, those who are saying use police only for violent crimes or where they're necessarily needed. What is your stance or take on, in your perfect version of society, what place police hold and how they should function?
I think it should be more of a technical called emotional intelligence type of training to do it. I think the barrier of entry is way too low
Absolutely.
for policemen and policewomen. Like, I feel like that's like, I can't get a job nowhere else, let me become police. Or, ooh, I want to be able to beat somebody's ass for no reason. I want to feel powerful because I draw my sense of power from nowhere else, so let me get this false sense of validation from outside. And then I feel like that even creates a false sense of having to like overdo it to prove that you're, because you're getting your sense of validation from somewhere else as opposed to yourself. So it just creates an all-time bad cycle of abuse among people who do that. But yeah, maybe just make it harder to become a policeman, a policewoman.
Yeah, I mean, obviously police have a place in our society. We have violent crimes, bank robberies, murders, things of that nature. But too often, I would say, even in my interactions with police, traffic stops, walking on the grounds of my school, I've had far too many interactions with police that have become violent just out of inherently having an interaction. I feel like very rarely has my interaction with police been nonviolent. I've always have to been detained or handcuffed or removed from my vehicle. It's never just been, I mean, it has been, but it's more times than not, it's been that. Where there's obviously a place for in those less violent avenues, such as traffic stops, policings, school grounds, that, like you said, emotional intelligence. There's room for mental health professionals to take a stab at that before a violent police officer has to get involved, or just a different tier of worker that perhaps doesn't have a gun or a taser, where those interactions don't have to become violent. Loss of life doesn't have to become involved when you're talking about, oh, I didn't turn on my blinker to make a right turn, and now I have to think about whether or not I'm losing my life. I just think in an evolved society, with everything that we have in terms of cancel culture for lifelong learning, having a wrong opinion and then changing it in the world that we live in today, that policing in that form is very archaic, very old, in that you shouldn't have to deal with violence in some of those areas where you encounter police. And so I think it can definitely be changed. Obviously defunding, rerouting funds to where they need to go, and also changing who's on call. Like I said, I don't think if somebody is speeding that they need to be worried about whether or not they should lose their life that night because they argued a speeding ticket. So yeah. Cool. Do you have anything else that you want to address as it relates to defunding the police?
No, not right now, but I do think it would be like a good segue into one of the other topics we had to talk about.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would just say stay tuned for our next topic.
Absolutely.
It's definitely going to be juicy, and it kind of relates to this. Just like, I think like, what do we do to assimilate into society? Like, I know that's like devil's advocate, but like,
go ahead.
Those people like, I identify as white, and they're definitely a black person. It's just like, they got the blonde wig on with the, I don't know, some blue eye contacts. Like, even just like down to like how I wear my hair, I get treated differently.
Yeah.
Like, I think that makes, like, that's a juicy topic that we should delve into next.
Absolutely. And so, like Janae said, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about to what extent black people should assimilate, should go out of their way to fit into white spaces, because, as you climb the ladder of success, even us in the engineering field, the higher we got in engineering, the higher we climbed the corporate ladder, the less and less of us that we saw. So whether you like it or not, these spaces that are deemed successful are majority white spaces. And, a topic that comes up frequently is, how do you deal with that as a black person? What responsibility do you have to make white people comfortable in these spaces? Or what responsibility do you have as a black person to be your 1000% authentic self in these spaces? Because why should I have to change who I am to fit in? So that's a topic that we're going to be discussing next time. Obviously, as always, if you have any commentary, things that you felt that we missed on this topic, things that you would like to add, we are in open forum, always open to have conversation. Continue to tell us how we can keep the conversation going. Tell us how we can make an impact. We're always open and welcome to feedback. We thank you for tuning in, and until next time, peace.